Hello, welcome to the first episode of Criminalistic. This has been a long time coming. I meant to put out the first episode of this like years and years and years ago. And I just never did. I got a little too into the research aspect of this. But yeah, let me explain what this is. So Criminalistic is a passion project for me, a junior in high school, that I'm doing for my EP Lang class. And it's basically focusing on behavioral and social psychology as it relates to true crime cases. Yeah. All right, so today we have our first case, and that is going to be, drumroll please, Ted Bundy. We're just going to be examining how Ted Bundy's childhood affected how he turned out as an adult and how his childhood experiences shaped him. So let's start. Born in 1946 to his unmarried mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, Robert Theodore Bundy,
I made a mistake. His name was Theodore Robert Bundy.
Anyways, lived in Burlington, Vermont. His early years were off to a bit of a rocky start. He believed his mother was his sister and that his grandparents were his parents. Adding to this kind of confusion that already was centered around this weird relationship with his family, Bundy's stepfather and him had a strained relationship, and his biological father was absent. He never met him. So we are going to be focusing mainly on that lack of father figure, and to do that, we have to look at Freud. According to Freud, children go through what is called the psychosexual stages of development. And right smack dab in the middle of this, there is a stage called the phallic stage. During the phallic stage, we encounter what is probably what Freud is best known for, most infamous for, and that is called the Oedipus complex. During the Oedipus stage, young boys unconsciously develop a sexual desire for their mothers. Gross, I know. They also develop jealousy for their fathers. Now, we grow out of this stage because we realize that socially, it's not okay to want your parents sexually. That's gross. Because young boys end up realizing that they cannot want their mother sexually, they also tend to realize they are not in competition with their fathers. They're not competing against them for their mother's attention or love. They instead change this jealousy into a sort of reverence. This is why fathers become such big role models for sons, and why sons base so much of what they do off of their fathers. That's kind of where that whole strong male role model aspect comes in. Back to Bundy. So, with his already strained relationship with his stepfather and his complete lack of a biological father, Bundy has now a stunted view of relationships and women because he is stuck in the phallic stage. Though he was never physically abused, he was reported as being emotionally neglected. Emotional neglect can stunt a child's ability to form attachments, and this coupled with his stuck in the phallic stage.
Yikes.
Sticking with Freudian terms, his defense mechanism of choice for these emotions that he was feeling was projection. He projected these frustrations and these aggressions onto women, which brings us to our next point. The frustration-aggression principle states that those miserable make other people miserable. Differing from the charismatic version that we see him portrayed as, like in modern day media, Bundy was actually reported to be a very shy and reserved child. So overall, Bundy's lack of parent figures and father figures and a good, strong role model overall led to cognitive distortion, and his perception of people was insanely skewed, and he ended up viewing them as people to be deceived and manipulated, specifically women. Bundy essentially took a road trip and confessed to committing 30 murders across the states of California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, and Florida, between 1973 and 1978. Bundy was in one serious relationship with a girl that he claimed that he truly loved. His first real relationship was with a woman named Diane Marjorie Jean Edwards. Diane came from a very wealthy family, and as much as she claimed that Ted never made her feel like it was a physical thing and that he made her feel like it was a very loving, sweet relationship, Ted claimed that he really wanted to be upper class. He said that as his concerns for the future took over, he started to have a lot of feelings of rejection that stemmed from this relationship. By the end of that first summer of university, they were done for good. Diane ended it, and Bundy's reaction was to beg her, and then his later reaction was to exact revenge on her, in his words. Of course, as far as we know, he never acted on this want to exact revenge, but these feelings of abandonment that stemmed from his early life and his first relationship overall created that kind of schema for women in relationships being a bad thing and made it difficult for him to form attachments. This brings us to the question, does every single person who get broken up with or have a bad home life become a serial killer? No. Bundy was speculated to have narcissistic personality disorder, psychopathy, and, as we have seen in his statements regarding revenge against his first girlfriend who broke up with him, he has very high volatility, very high reactivity, which is essentially your anger. Moral of the story, Ted Bundy's childhood was probably one of the main reasons that he turned out the way he did and that his targets were who they were. Alright, I know that this was a very short episode, but it was my first episode, and I will try to make it a little bit longer on the next one. So thank you very much for watching the first episode of Criminalistic, and I will hopefully see you next week.